Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. So I just want to amplify this a little bit. Talking about evolution versus essentially dictatorship or dictates. All around the world, millions and millions of different people. And in a way, actually, this also plays into a larger discussion about why the European Union is disintegrating. And frankly, why we're seeing a political war between the states here in the United States. I mean, the radical differences between, for example, California and Alabama. Why is that? Well, over the course of history, humans developed cultures, always in the context. I mean, over the three plus million years of the history of the genus Homo and the roughly 165,000 year history of Homo sapiens, we developed cultures based on this idea that we belong to the world. And since we belong to the world, we have to protect the world, but we also have to figure out a good way to live that's comfortable and happy and provides us with food and shelter and all those kind of things. And depending on where people live, they develop different cultural systems. So you had all these thousands of different cultures that, in warmer environments, you really have to have a different culture, a different set of rules, different set of ways of living than you do, for example, in a very northern climate. But we developed that, we humans. And then a couple thousand years ago, somebody came along and said, forget the gods. There is actually with Hammurabi, the very first lawgiver back around 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, or you could take it back to Gilgamesh, the gods, but now it's monotheistic. God says, no, there's only one right way to live, and this is it, and everybody has to live that way. Well, that's monoculture. Monocultures are fragile. If you plant your entire field, your entire farm in just one crop, a little bit of fungus that can wipe that crop out, everything's gone. Diversity brings strength. But don't tell that to the Republican Party. Don't tell that to the younger culture. We'll be back. Jesse in Miami. Hey, Jesse, what's on your mind today?
Hey, hi, Tom. Hey, I was thinking, with the Dakota pipeline and all the protests against the environmental change, we had that coming to truth with the bailout of the banking system when they had the, buy up all the toxic subprime loans. So I'm trying to use common sense here, saying, okay, you got all these people protesting the environmental change, and we see it day to day. And we know it's toxic to the earth, to the humanity itself. What's the difference between getting QE to buy toxic real estate, buying toxic bonds for fossil fuel industry? You follow me on this?
Yeah, I don't see how you bring the Fed into the fossil fuel business. What am I missing here?
Well, they got into the real estate business.
Well, not really. They were simply buying the bad real estate, the derivatives that the banks owned. I mean, they were basically, through QE, what the bank has been doing is helping the banks unload the crap on their balance sheets and replace it with good loans and things. And it's been a massive welfare program, a multi-trillion-dollar welfare program for our banks. They're doing it in Europe too. There's QE in Europe as well, and it's extended and amplified the bubble. But I'm sorry, Jesse.
I'm trying to point out, Tom, is that what's the difference between bad loans and stuff that's destroying the world? I think it's comparison.
Yeah, at a kind of metaphysical level, there's absolutely no difference. You're absolutely right, Jesse. This is all part of this worldview of the world is here for us. We own the world. The world belongs to us, rather than we belong to the world, that, you know, that we're part of something larger than us. Instead, we view it as we're the largest, and the world is this smaller thing that we can just, you know, do whatever we want. I mean, they just found, there was a great story in one of the science magazines yesterday in the Mariana Trench, because so many of these poisons that we're producing, these industrial poisons, you know, the PCBs and things like that cause cancer and everything, because they're long chain, large molecules, they're heavier than water. And then, of course, all the heavy metals and stuff, they're all heavier than water. And they just finally went down to the Mariana Trench and just scooped up some dirt and brought it up and discovered that it's got more pollution than pretty much any place else on Earth, because everything's settling to the lowest spot. I mean, this is how insane this dominator culture, to use Rianne Eisler's phrase, or taker culture, to use Dan Quinn's phrase, or younger culture, to use my phrase from Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight. That's how crazy it is. Jesse, great point. Thank you. It took me a minute to figure it out, but thank you. That was brilliant. Glenn in Olivet, Michigan. Hey, Glenn, what's on your mind?
Hey, John. Since you're on the point of Standing Rock, let's talk to you about a couple people that have actually, you know, as you say, tag you're it. They're very involved with the big oil. John Molenbaugh, he's been involved with the oil spill since Kalamazoo, and
who?
Promoting John Molenbaugh.
I don't know who that is.
He was a whistleblower. He's the one that caused Emirates to come back and do a second cleanup after the EPA signed off it.
Great, good on him.
He has a free documentary that's they're promoting this weekend. He's actually traveling and doing this. It's free to anybody if they want to go to their website, which is helpa.org. But another one, as far as Standing Rock, Rod Weber, if you go to his Facebook site, or the viewers want to go to his Facebook site, he actually has frontline footage on all the devastation that's been going on with the indigenous community. Well,
here's the point that I was trying to make, Glenn. Is not just stand in solidarity with Standing Rock. And by the way, there's a great website at defunddapl.org, which, you know, I encourage people to check out. Defund, D-E-F-U-N-D, D-A-P-L, as in Dakota Access Pipeline.org. But I was trying to make even a larger point, which is that Standing Rock is a symptom of a cultural sickness that we've been carrying around for thousands of years. And we, by we, I'm talking about so-called civilized people, you know, basically Western European. But it's not just Western European. I mean, you know, the Chinese have the same sickness embedded in their culture as well. Japanese, Central and South America. But you know, pick your place. It's just this kind of came along with industrialized civilization, that the world is just this kind of dead, inanimate object. Even the living things in it, they're just things to be moved around. You know, it's just a giant game. And or you know, the Cartesian world of René Descartes, you know, it's just a giant machine. And if we can just find the right lever, we with the big brains, and we're the ones who the entire world was put here so that when we arrived, we could take charge. And that's basically the story of our religions, and it's the fundamental story of our culture, and it is killing us. Whereas the older story, the story that for 3 million years humans lived in peace and harmony, and by the way, working typically 2 to 3 hours a day, as Marshall Shalins wrote, you know, the original leisure society, hunting-gathering societies, and you know, most time was spent singing and hanging out with family and, you know, doing things culturally. But these older societies understood that if you don't interact with the world and view it as a living thing that we are a smaller part of, the world is the bigger thing, then we will commit suicide. And most of them came to that realization through a horrible trial and error. In other words, they came to that realization by trying what we're doing and destroying their local ecosystems. It happened in Australia, it happened in New Zealand, easily documented all over the islands of the Pacific. But in a very big way, it happened here in North America. I mean, you know, look up Clovis people sometime. It's you know, again, I write about this at some length in Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight, and I talked about the Clovis people. These are the, you know, arrowheads first found at Clovis, New Mexico, that they used to date the first you know, occupation of North America by humans. And And, you know, we came to this continent and we found all these animals that you could literally just walk up to and kill. And, you know, the three-toed sloth and the woolly mammoth and all. And we killed them. We wiped them out. And in many areas of the country, we just completely destroyed the local environment. And then people sat around and said, oh, my God, we just destroyed, you know, our local environment. We can't even live here anymore. We've got to figure out a different way to live. And so a culture evolved that was successful at living. And now our culture is in the process of destroying those cultures, this whole wide variety of cultures that all viewed the earth as the living thing that we are a part of, rather than the thing that we are supposed to dominate. And until we learn that lesson, see, the problem that we're facing right now is that all these cultures all around the world, they destroyed their local environments to learn the lesson. But we're now fixing to destroy the entire friggin' planet. You know, or at least the biosphere that sustains our life. And if we really truly make that mistake with massive global climate change and, you know, leading to the sixth extinction, then we're not going to have an opportunity to sit around and say, okay, let's reboot our culture and figure out a more appropriate way to live. But I think your point is well taken, Glenn. Thanks for the call and thanks for making it. Rick in San Jose, California. Hey, Rick, what's up?
Oh, good morning, Tom. It's not a rant. It's on what you're doing this morning. It's an educational lesson that should be repeated every single day, and should be just spread through our society and our planet, because you have got it nailed on how we can go ahead and recover ourselves for the future of our children, grandchildren, etc.
Right. We need to be listening to the elders of Standing Rock. They hold the ancient wisdom.
Right. This is exactly right, and the media needs to get with it and essentially turn the spotlight on that for I would hope it'd be an indoctrination.
Yeah.
The guys who are running the show right now are just the epitome of how the evolution that you've talked about has come from let's take care of us to I'm taking care of me.
Right.
And the decisions they
well, actually, the first step was let's take care of all life.
That's right.
And not even take care of. Let's let all life take care of us. I mean, older cultures literally had this idea that they lived in the hands of the gods. And we have this idea that the gods live in our hands. We twist even the words of Scripture. We twist to our own. Oh, you can't have an abortion because it says it in this Bible, in this book that's 3,000 years old. You know, that kind of thing. Pardon my interrupting you, Rick.
No, you're not. And you said we. I choose not to subscribe to the pronoun for that. I'm saying they. I don't. I have to live under a certain set of things that control my life in terms of remaining in society to be able to function. But I don't subscribe to the direction, so I don't want to be part of that we that you were.
I'm absolutely with you, and you know, I've been singing this song for a couple of decades, you know, writing books on this stuff, and it's not that often that I talk about it on the radio, and I think I need to talk about it more. And by the way, this psychopathology that is at the core of our culture is now being played out big time in our national politics. You know, the idea, just the very idea, that we are separate from nature, that we were created 6,000 years ago by a God, you know, the entire world was created and put here for us. And then we were created by a God who said, okay, now you're in charge, and therefore we're in charge and we're going to destroy everything. That's psychotic. And that's and that kind of psychotic thinking, that psychosis, not only has infected our culture, but now, according to many people, I mean, today's New York Times, right on the front page, at least on the digital version of NewYorkTimes.com, there's a link to a letter from a couple of psychologists, and it's literally on the front page of the New York Times saying Donald Trump is psychotic, or maybe they're not using the word psychotic, but, you know, is mentally ill. And I would say that the mental illness that Donald Trump has, that, you know, me, mine, you know, everything for me, I'm the center of the world, that kind of stuff that he keeps saying, basically, in every regard, whether it's bragging about the size of his hands or the size of his victory or you know, voter fraud, whatever, that psychosis that is being, or narcissism at the very least, that's being exhibited by the White House is it's like, you know, the cancer reaches the point where it's unmistakable. You know, the tumor grows to the point where it starts to erupt through the skin and ooze. That's where we're at right now in our politics. Our politics has been infected by this culture, and why and how? How is it that the sickness that largely seems to be confined? I mean, the real sickness, it's largely seems to be confined to billionaires, is destroying our culture now and is represented in the White House and in the Republican Party? Well, because a couple of billionaires and their 500 buddies funded this whole thing. I mean, you know, the whole Koch network, bigger than the Republican Party.